Have you ever experienced a sudden, inexplicable transformation in your reality? The truth is, you have actually done this countless times. In many of those instances, you likely didn't even recognize what was transpiring simply because no one had ever provided a specific label for that exact phenomenon. Think back to a recent time when your internal world altered abruptly. I am not talking about a slow, gradual adjustment over time. I mean a rapid, spontaneous pivot. Imagine a moment when you felt entirely trapped, deeply frustrated, emotionally weighed down, or creatively blocked. Then, in a split second, that heavy atmosphere lifted. Crucially, this didn't happen because your external environment changed. Long before any physical circumstances shifted, your internal relationship with the obstacles in front of you transformed. That singular internal pivot completely reorganized the entire fabric of your reality. Everything that unfolded afterward felt profoundly different from the negative momentum that had been accumulating just moments prior. The mechanics of the leap, what you experienced, was a literal quantum shift. It was a tangible alteration where your internal state, the precise condition of the observer, caused the surrounding field of reality to collapse into a brand new experience. This transition happened so instantaneously that it feels much more like flipping a light switch than working through a tedious process. In the realm of quantum mechanics, that instantaneous snap is precisely how reality functions. Most individuals ask the completely wrong question regarding these breakthroughs. They fixate exclusively on what occurred, rather than investigating how it was generated. What exactly is the driving mechanism behind this shift? If you can successfully pinpoint that underlying trigger, you no longer have to sit around hoping for accidental miracles. Instead, you can learn to intentionally orchestrate these shifts on command. That is exactly the ultimate purpose of this presentation. We aren't discussing vague philosophies or theoretical frameworks today. We are breaking down a highly specific, easily repeatable mechanism designed to alter the state of the observer so rapidly that the quantum field registers your new frequency before your old, limiting habits can drag you back down. Furthermore, I am going to share 3 practical, concrete techniques to activate this mechanism, tools you can implement right now, no matter what chaos you are currently dealing with in your life. The illusion of effort. Before we dive into the actual techniques, we must establish one fundamental ground rule. This process has absolutely nothing to do with trying harder. In reality, excessive effort is the exact obstacle preventing your success. The quantum mechanism operates on a completely counterintuitive fuel source. Once you truly comprehend what that element is, it will completely revolutionize how you handle life's most crucial turning points. When our lives hit a roadblock, our natural human instinct is to apply sheer force. We lean into aggressive discipline, intense focus, and raw willpower. We push back forcefully against the uncomfortable state we desperately want to escape. This reaction is so deeply ingrained in our psychology that we rarely stop to question it. It just feels like the right and responsible thing to do when something needs fixing. However, at a quantum level, this forceful instinct is incredibly destructive. Effort applied directly to a state only reinforces the existence of that state. When you exert massive effort to fight your current reality, that very struggle forces you to remain intensely focused on your current position. Your conscious attention becomes thoroughly anchored to your misery, and your observation becomes entirely saturated with the problem. Because the quantum field simply mirrors the state of the observer, it detects this intense saturation and continuously generates realities that match exactly what the observer is fixated on. By fighting your current state, you are commanding the universe to give you more of the exact thing you are trying to leave behind. More struggle does not alter the observer's state. It only deepens the rut. I struggled with this destructive cycle for years, mistakenly believing I needed to work harder to change my life, only to find myself further entrenched in my issues. I wasn't doing it wrong. I just didn't realize that effort actively blocks the quantum mechanism. The shift doesn't occur when you battle the present moment, but when you authentically, even if just for a fleeting second, step into a completely different frequency. When the observer shifts briefly, the field receives a new blueprint to reflect, A field reacting to a brand new state naturally constructs the environment necessary for that new reality to become stable and easily accessible. This is achieved not through agonizing endurance, but through a micro-moment of genuine transition that establishes a fresh reference point for the universe. Method 1. Engineering the gap. The question then becomes, how do we intentionally manufacture this fleeting transition? You can actually master this in mere seconds. The first technique leverages a fascinating truth about the quantum field. It responds to the elevation from which you are observing, rather than the specific content of what you are looking at. When you are consumed by a difficult, reactive, or suffocating state, you are observing life from squarely inside the problem. You are entirely merged with the negativity. There is zero separation between you and the issue. Without that necessary separation, you have absolutely no leverage. You simply cannot manipulate or shift a structure if you are hopelessly entangled within it. The first method engineers this crucial gap instantaneously. You don't try to change the problem you are looking at. Instead, you radically alter the scale from which you are viewing it. Here is the exact execution process. No matter what stressful situation you find yourself in, forcefully expand your conscious attention outward. The goal isn't to run away or disassociate from the problem, but to simultaneously embrace a much larger portion of the quantum field in your awareness. Feel the physical dimensions of the room you are currently standing in. Next, expand your mind's eye to encompass the entire building. Then, visualize the sprawling city surrounding it, moving outward to feel the massive curvature of the planet beneath your feet. Finally, stretch your awareness into the infinite field, expanding in every conceivable direction beyond your physical sight. This triggers a monumental shift in perceptual scale. You instantly transition from being a tiny, contracted ego trapped inside a localized problem to a vast, expanded consciousness where the initial issue is nothing more than a microscopic speck embedded within an infinitely larger canvas. When you practice this outward expansion consistently, executing it only takes a mere 3 to 10 seconds. It is crucial to understand that the immediate byproduct here isn't necessarily a wave of emotional tranquility. Instead, it fundamentally upgrades the vantage point of the observer. Viewing the exact same predicament from a vastly broadened scope of awareness results in a wholly different experiential reality. Consequently, the quantum environment begins to interact with this newly elevated observer, completely bypassing the old, restricted version of you. The true catalyst for this quantum shift isn't just the sheer vastness of your expanded awareness. Rather, it is the profound internal transformation of the one doing the observing. The universe simply mirrors the current watcher. When the identity of the watcher transforms, the physical manifestations naturally follow suit. Let's pause for a quick moment. I want you to drop down into the comments section below and answer this. Have you ever encountered a spontaneous moment where your entire internal reality shifted suddenly, without you lifting a single finger to change your external world? Leave just one quick sentence detailing exactly how that spontaneous transition felt. Acknowledging these past experiences is vital because it proves this underlying quantum mechanism is already native and familiar to your system. Method 2. Shattering the feedback loop. Our second technique operates on a completely different frequency. Rather than casting your awareness outward, it is designed to sharply sever the deeply entrenched internal loops, keeping you imprisoned in your current state. When a quantum framework settles into a particular rhythm, it naturally tends to persist in that exact rhythm. This isn't because the condition is permanently frozen, but because your surrounding environment keeps feeding you familiar data, and you keep reacting with predictable behaviors. You and your environment are caught in a self-sustaining feedback loop. To shatter this cycle, you cannot simply tweak how you react to the same old triggers. You must forcefully inject a brand new stimulus, something your current, contracted state has absolutely no predetermined blueprint for handling. When you feel suffocated by a problem, instead of reacting in your usual way, do something entirely out of character. It doesn't need to be wildly dramatic. It just needs to be genuinely unexpected. Let out an authentic, unscripted laugh at something mundane. Ask a completely random question devoid of any hidden agenda. Move your physical body in a bizarre, unstructured manner that serves no logical purpose. Speak a raw, unplanned truth out loud. Every single one of these actions forcefully smuggles a rogue signal into your nervous system. Your stuck state possesses no existing filters to decode this bizarre data. As a result, your internal processing briefly short-circuits to analyze the anomaly. Right there, inside that momentary suspension of logic, a gap appears. You are temporarily divorced from your previous emotional prison. This fleeting window is your quantum entry point. The disruption doesn't need to be deeply profound. It merely needs to be genuinely foreign to your usual routine. Because your routine is what generates the stuck state. Stepping outside of it creates a micro-moment where you are suspended between realities available, unbound, and not yet collapsed back into your old habits. I have instinctively utilized this precise circuit breaker during moments when I felt entirely paralyzed, and the ensuing reality was invariably radically different from the doom I had been spiraling toward. Method 3. The perceptual time jump. This brings us to the final, most counterintuitive and arguably the most potent strategy. This method leverages the most foundational law of quantum mechanics. Physical states literally do not solidify until they are actively observed. The very act of watching is what materializes the condition being watched. Therefore, if you can authentically occupy the exact observational vantage point of a version of yourself who has already successfully navigated this shift, the field is instantly forced to respond to this newly upgraded observer. Let me be incredibly precise. I am not talking about traditional visualization or superficial positive thinking. Those are merely surface-level alterations that fail to change the core mechanics of the observer. We are executing something much more specific here. When you are stuck, pose this one hyper-specific question to yourself and let the answer rise from your deep intuition, completely bypassing your analytical brain. What is the very first physical detail I would organically notice right now if my desired reality had already fully materialized? Notice how I didn't ask what you would feel, nor did I ask what you would think. The focal point is entirely on what you would notice. What would instantly capture your attention if your primary obstacle had vanished completely? This extreme level of specificity is the secret weapon. It instantly teleports the observer from a state of desperately aspiring toward a goal to actively inhabiting the perceptual reality of that goal, even if only for a fraction of a second. The power of the perceptual anchor. Here is a profound truth. The fabric of the universe does not differentiate between a person who is physically living in a specific reality and someone who is genuinely occupying the sensory viewpoint of that reality. In both scenarios, the internal output is identical, which means the quantum field collapses into physical form from the exact same frequency. You only need to sustain this new vantage point briefly, just long enough to establish a permanent internal anchor. That tiny reference point changes everything. The moment the universe delivers even the smallest physical reflection of this new frequency, it becomes a tangible part of your lived experience. The transformation is no longer a theoretical fantasy. It is a validated fact. By continuously confirming these new states, even in microscopic flashes, you train the surrounding field to present them to you with increasing regularity. Let me be absolutely clear. This is not about trendy, superficial manifestation techniques. This is a highly practical, direct application of physical laws governing how the geometry of the observer commands the external environment. Ask the question. Let the answer rise organically from your core. Pay close attention to what surfaces. That pure act of noticing is the exact doorway to your breakthrough, the unfiltered wisdom of childhood. This perfectly segues into a phenomenal insight shared by a viewer recently. Their words captured the essence of this dynamic far better than most adult experts ever could. Let's look at the featured comment of the day. It was easier as a child. Still operating in the I am. That single observation is flawlessly accurate. Children execute quantum leaps effortlessly all day long. They don't achieve this through advanced knowledge of physics. They do it because they haven't yet constructed the psychological armor that blocks the mechanism. When a child is fully immersed in an experience, they aren't straining or trying hard to stay focused. There is zero friction, they are simply existing inside the moment. Furthermore, when their emotional landscape changes, it pivots completely. They don't linger. Adults, however, are deeply conditioned to hedge their bets. We cautiously test a new reality while keeping a firm, protective grip on our past miseries, terrified of fully committing to a new state just in case it falls apart. This adult hesitation is precisely why our personal breakthroughs are so agonizingly slow. Kids don't brace for impact. They surrender entirely to the transition, returning to the I am baseline. At their core, the three strategies I've outlined, whether it's expanding your awareness, shattering your behavioral loops, or mentally teleporting to the finish line, all achieve the exact same underlying goal. They force you to temporarily release your protective grip on your previous identity. In that brief window of total surrender, the new reality is allowed to materialize fully, rather than being kept at a cautious distance. That specific phrase from the comment, operating in the I am, is brilliantly precise. The I am isn't a fleeting mood or a specific emotion. It is the absolute bedrock of consciousness, the neutral foundation from which you can step into any new reality without your past dragging you backward. Children naturally reside closer to this foundational baseline, while we adults must actively retrain our minds to find our way back. I want to hear from you right now. Drop down into the comments and tell me, which of these three techniques resonated the most deeply with your personal wiring? Was it the outward expansion of awareness, the sudden interruption of a pattern, or the perceptual time jump? Acknowledging which method clicks for your unique neurology is incredibly valuable data for your journey. The illusion of backward gravity. Before we conclude, we must confront the absolute biggest roadblock that derails this entire process. Even when you execute the techniques flawlessly, something jarring happens in the microscopic gap between your attempt and the actual physical shift. The culprit isn't self-doubt, nor is it a lack of technique. It is a phenomenon I call backward gravity. Right as your internal system is on the verge of a massive upgrade, the dying state violently fights back. It senses its own destruction and forcefully amplifies its negative signal one last time. It screams at you that nothing is actually changing, that your attempt is failing, and that your miserable old reality is the only undeniable truth. Listen to me carefully. This intense resistance is not a sign that you are failing. It is the ultimate proof that your breakthrough is working. In the realm of quantum physics, when one state dissolves into another, a process known as decoherence, the system generates chaotic interference patterns. For a split second, the dying reality and the newborn reality violently clash and overlap, navigating the turbulence of transition. This chaotic interference is undeniably uncomfortable. It manifests as a profound sense of instability, often tricking you into believing that your situation is rapidly deteriorating rather than improving. When the average person encounters this intense friction, they immediately misinterpret it as a catastrophic failure. Terrified of the discomfort, they instinctively retreat to the familiar misery of their old state, simply to make the turbulence stop. Tragically, this retreat serves as the final nail in the coffin. It actively validates the old reality's claim that nothing was genuinely transforming. The psychological loop snaps shut, and they are trapped once again. However, those who successfully master this quantum leap perceive this interference through a completely different lens. They do not view it as a red flag warning them to retreat. Instead, they recognize it as the ultimate green light, absolute confirmation that the transition is actively unfolding. It simply means both realities are sharing the same space for a split second while your internal operating system aggressively reorganizes itself. How you behave inside that turbulent window dictates whether your breakthrough solidifies or your old programming wins. You do not need to fiercely battle the turbulence. You simply need to refuse to retreat. Hold your ground in that new perceptual reality for just 10 more seconds. The interference is highly temporary, Your old, dying state absolutely cannot sustain its aggressive intensity if you refuse to feed it your conscious engagement. Deprived of your attention, the old reality eventually starves and releases its grip. The shift finalizes. The quantum environment successfully recalibrates around the upgraded version of you, and the reality that unfolds next is beautifully unrecognizable from the struggle you were enduring just moments before. Join the community and deepen your practice. If this presentation provided you with tangible, actionable tools rather than just empty philosophical concepts, I highly encourage you to subscribe to this channel right now. This is the exact caliber of content I am dedicated to constructing here. Practical mechanisms, not just fleeting motivation. I am sharing real-world tools you can deploy in the heat of your darkest moments. My goal is to cultivate an authentic space that delivers profound knowledge far beyond surface-level reflections. If you resonate with this mission, drop the words reflex and authentic in the comments right now to let me know you're with me. Furthermore, I have something incredibly special prepared for those of you who are ready to dive deeper. If you are currently navigating a massive life transition and require a comprehensive blueprint for the entire journey, my brand new ebook, The Quantum Transition Field Guide, is officially available in the description below. This is a robust 8-9-page masterclass detailing exactly what a legitimate quantum leap looks and feels like from the inside out. I have personally navigated this turbulent path, and I wrote this to serve as your compass. It reveals exactly what sabotages the process and what accelerates it. I've even included a highly actionable 30-day practical navigation protocol specifically engineered for anyone currently stuck in the messy middle of a life transition. Grab it at the special launch price linked in the description below and enjoy the transformation. Your Quantum Toolkit. A quick recap. I want to leave you with a clear, immediate action plan. At some point today, you are inevitably going to encounter a stressful moment where a radical shift is necessary. You will find yourself in a state that simply isn't serving your highest good, where pushing harder will only generate more frustration. When that inevitable moment strikes, you are now equipped with 3 powerful options that you didn't possess before pressing play on this video. Expand your observational scale. Forcefully step back from being a victim entangled inside the problem. Expand your awareness outward to become the vast field that merely contains the problem. Hold it for 3 to 10 seconds. When the observer scales up, the field immediately follows. Shatter the pattern. Inject a radically unexpected input into your nervous system, something your current, stuck state has no predetermined script for. Let out a genuine laugh. Ask a random question, or move your physical body aimlessly. Your system will briefly suspend its panic to process the bizarre input, tearing open the quantum gap. Collapse the future forward. Ask yourself exactly what physical detail you would notice first if your desired breakthrough had already happened. Answer from your soul, not your logic. Allow the universe to respond to the version of you who has already crossed the finish line, rather than the version desperately trying to run the race. None of these strategies demand more grueling effort from you. In fact, they demand drastically less. Specifically, they require you to stop using your precious energy to maintain the miserable state you are desperately trying to escape. This quantum shift is not something you forge through brute force. It is a biological and physical release. It is something you allow to happen by briefly, authentically surrendering your tight grip on your current reality, just long enough for the universe to reorganize itself around an entirely new you. You have already executed this phenomenon accidentally in the past. Now, you understand the precise mechanics behind it. It is time to do it on purpose. Head down to the comments right now and declare your intentions. Where exactly are you going to deploy one of these 3 techniques today? Do not say eventually. Name the specific, immediate situation in your life where you will use this. Writing it down crystallizes your intention, and the quantum field always responds to extreme specificity. Thank you so much for your time and attention, and I look forward to seeing you in our next reflection.